So, despite the fact that I need to put up a lot more bookish content and everything, I'm gonna get more out there. I do consider myself a pretty active member of the booktube and now slash book talk community. And one of my favorite types of videos is just people talking about the things they love in books, right? Or their reading journeys. I love when people talk about what they like in characters, plot. Are they a character driven person, a plot driven person, a mixture? Do they venture outside of their favorite genres? What are some popular books they liked? What are some lesser known books that they liked? I just love bookish opinions, right? Because my way of reading, I feel, has changed by joining bookish communities. They are not without fault, and I've also enjoyed those videos critiquing things like booktube and just like consumerism and the possibility of fake reading and stuff like that. There's people who've done great videos on that, so I'm not going to ramble too much, and just repeat a lot of the things they've said. But anyways, watching those videos, and I was watching some people talk about things that they like in books recently today, and it got me thinking about how I've changed in my reading somewhat because of things like booktube. So the thing is, I feel I kind of went sort of backwards on things, and I'll explain what I mean. So when I was a kid, I read kids' books, right? I love Goosebumps and stuff similar, chapter books, stuff like that, right? Pretty basic. But I feel when I became like a teenager, I it's not that I didn't read YA, but I feel when I was in my like mid or later 20s and I was discovering booktube channels and stuff, I read more YA then than I did when I was an actual young adult. So, because I was reading things like Speak and The Giver, which is, I think, maybe middle grade. I know some books kind of are in the middle, I feel, of like middle grade and then young adult. But, anyways, I was reading stuff like, yeah, Speak, The Giver, stuff like that, but also things like Interview with the Vampire and some other things. Maybe I had a little bit more YA, but I feel some of it was lesser known. I feel I did a lot of YA reading in like my 20s, mainly because of BookTube. Because YA is what is predominantly on BookTube, or for the longest time it was. See, like when you are first discovering something and learning about it and stuff like that, you're obviously going to get hit with the most popular of things, right? And the most popular thing was YA. And I'm still reading YA, but I'm also reading more adult books, going back to that. Um, yeah, it's kind of funny because, like, for a while, I was reading like the adult books from like the authors that I had read before that I knew I liked, but for like the longest time, I wasn't hearing about any like books written for adults that really sounded interesting. And it's probably because, again, YA was really being pushed on people who were doing book reviews and book discussions and stuff like that. So a lot of what I heard that was good was not anything other than YA. And again, I think even middle grade was like affected by this. But I've always been very eclectic in my reading. I feel I'm eclectic in my movie watching, my music listening. So, of course, I'm still very eclectic in my book reading. But I think it's very easy to like fall into like a comfort, a pattern, You get stuck reading a certain type of book. But I think it is because I am a smaller booktuber who is open to watching other smaller booktubers. I love to find smaller channels um, because they usually do book discussions. They do actual book reviews. And this is not any kind of hate to like bigger booktubers, and I've talked about this before. There are a lot that I find very entertaining, and some that have very well done videos. But I do find that smaller channels, and I'm even including some that have like a few thousand subscribers, something that's like under like the several thousand or even million views or subscribers that some do have. I feel that the smaller ones actually talk about books, like really have in-depth discussions. Most of the in-depth character discussions, analysis, whatever you want to call it, breakdowns, talks about symbolism in books come from these smaller channels. And that's whether they are talking about middle grade, YA, adult, um, fantasy, horror, whatever. So definitely being open to smaller channels like myself and not just trying to get in with the bigger ones really has, changed the way I look at books and everything. Because I've always been a reader. I've always loved stories. And yes, I've always loved characters and stuff. And, I've felt things for characters. I've liked certain plots versus other ones and stuff like that. I've always had my basic bookish opinions. But I feel like I kind of analyze things a little bit more now. I'm not just wanting to read books for trends because you can, and it doesn't matter like the age range or whatever, you can fall into it not just with that, but also with genre. Like I said, I read Unwind. I need to finish the story or the series, I mean. It's been a little hard because I've turned to audiobooks to help me get through books and everything because life, unfortunately, not every book has one, so it takes longer to read physical books, which I love books in all formats, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I thought that was an interesting idea, and then I got into reading The Hunger Games, which, if you've been on my channel, so far that is like my favorite series of all time, or at least one of them. So I kind of looked into things like dystopia and everything, and I've tried to read some, and I feel like some I should give a second chance to, just because sometimes you're not in the right time or environment to enjoy a book the way it should be. But I tried to read some other YA dystopians, and while some are good, some are just okay. I read the first Matched book, and it wasn't terrible, but it felt like it borrowed a lot from things that are already out there. Not even the Hunger Games. Like, it felt very Giver-ish. And again, it wasn't a poorly written book. It's just, it's not really memorable. Thank you, Nate.
Welcome.
So I might try to finish the series. Like I said, it's not terrible. Just I don't remember too much about it. I was trying to read the Killables. I have it on my Nook app and my Nook. But again, some of these just seem really out there. I wasn't crazy about Reboot. It just seems like they're trying to like redo the whole sad girl, hard life kind of thing. But the thing about it is there was a reason it worked for the Hunger Games. That series is full of symbolism, metaphor, allegories, whatever word you want to use to the real world, past and present, and how those things, if the problematic things aren't, dealt with, challenged, how it may affect people in the future, right? That is very heavily inspired slash drawn, whatever, from real life events with like futuristic things put onto it. It covered things such as PTSD and poverty and war and, you know, prejudice of all sides and everything. So, I love the series for that reason, and I was looking for things similar to it. I haven't found it yet. But that's the thing, like, there's nothing wrong with getting into something or having like a favorite genre, but again, you can get stuck to the point where you're just looking for something similar and you find yourself disappointed. So I've had my fair share of disappointing reads. When I was younger, I read just about anything. Like I said, it was a mixture of things. And I didn't really look deeply into it, which, fine, not everybody does. But I like the fact that I analyze things. I like the fact that I could go on to somebody's review and see things that I miss in a story. It wasn't until in my 20s, after BookTube and everything, or when I started getting into BookTube, that I started rereading books and going back and revisiting my favorite characters, my favorite passages, quotes, seeing the inspiration that these authors got from other authors, and that led me to wanting to check out other books. I have a 40 before 40 list. A lot have classic books that I never get a chance to read when I was younger. I just really like the reader that I've become. I'm not hating on the reader that I was when I was younger, but an upside to the book community, with all its flaws, is that it made me a more, I don't know if you call it, critical thinker in reading, but I definitely think more about what I'm reading and what it is trying to tell me. And, thinking, am I learning something from this? Sorry, I have to drink for a sec there. So, yeah. I like that I reread a book if it is my favorite. I don't care if I know the story or not, because again, with things like The Hunger Games, there is so much in there and so much I missed the first time. and so much you can learn about the world and history just from fiction. There was somebody on TikTok. I want to say it was Tattoo Bibliophile, and I feel bad because I follow these creators, but I watch so much bookish content. But I think they were one of the people that mentioned about the Lunar Chronicles. That rarely gets mentioned. Like, I loved that book or that series. It doesn't get enough love. Um, the first book was kind of predictable, yes, but it was fun. About um, disability representation because of Cinder being a cyborg. And if you don't know the whole premise, it's a series slightly loosely based upon several fairy tales, Cinder being Cinderella, and she is a cyborg, which means she is a person who has been fixed with like robotic parts. They pretty much treat them like second class citizens because they kind of feel that the people owe them because they were saved by this. And for some reason, I didn't really stop to think about that. Because the thing about it is the way the Lunar Chronicles are written / set up, it feels a lot lighter than something like, say, the Hunger Games. And I think because it's not very bleak in the way that those books are written, and they're not like first person narrative about somebody trying to survive and then going to a game to fight to the death, it maybe can get kind of overlooked as something kind of fluffy, even though there are several dark parts in that series. And there were things that went over my head, like again, the whole disability thing. Probably other things that I'm missing too out of that. So yeah, I love the fact that I can go online, I guess you would say, and find a community where I can listen to somebody's review, discussion, and discover things that I missed, go back and analyze it for myself and make my own opinions and learn things, think about things. I like the fact that I'm reading at different formats. I'm reading regular books, ebooks. Like I said, I really have fallen in love with audiobooks. The narrator, can make it easy or hard to get through, but audio really does help. I'm really liking graphic novels lately. Within the last few years, I'm trying to get more into graphic novels, manga, Sailor Moon, Bone. I feel like I'm rambling, which, sorry, it's late and I'm getting ready for bed. But yeah, I was just kind of thinking about that I am a different reader. I've always been a reader since, childhood and everything, but I'm just different in my reading, and that's okay. I've discovered that I don't have to like everything that an author writes. Some of my favorite authors, from whatever favorite authors I have, because I feel like I've read a little bit from this person or that person, so I don't have a set list of favorite authors. But there are definitely ones I've read more from than others, and I don't have to like everything that they've written. I can respect the art and their time and everything, but some things are better than others. And that is okay. I, discovered there is nothing wrong with liking a middle grade book, but also liking a horror book written for adults, right? I can like a book written in first person, third person. I can like a book and still have criticism on it. All kinds of things. So yeah, guess I just want to ramble a little bit about books. Thanks for watching.